The State Department sent out, they're building a system to where you can choose your pronouns that are in the from line. So when you send an email, it will say your name, and then it will use your pronouns in the system. And so they were apparently testing this out last week. And what it did is most of the pronouns were random, and actually, so apparently it was just randomized pronouns for people. And then it was, a lot of people were getting misgendered. So they were being told, like, when they would send an email to somebody, that it would have like the wrong pronouns in there. And so in response to that, the State Department is offering free therapy for those that were triggered by the misgendering on the emails. You can't make this up. I mean, it's an email glitch that they were supposed to have fixed on Saturday. I'm not sure if they did or not. But it's really interesting. Yeah, they were offering free therapy to anyone who's felt hurt or upset by the glitch. What is it? Let me see. And then they actually talked to one of the employees of the incident, said a lot of people have been triggered here today. So you have all these people who work, I mean, in the State Department's a pretty woke university. Let me actually pop this up real quick. So the State Department's a pretty woke department. I mean, most of the administration is pretty woke. And so this was them on the 17th, that they were, the internet, they posted this on the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Interphobia, and Transphobia. We call on the end to harmful conversion therapy practices, including those attempted to change a person's sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or sexual characteristics. That is, I mean, that's the progress flag, and it's the woke. I mean, we have another day. So my first reaction to that was, we have another day. I mean, we have June coming up, which I'm not looking forward to, but we have another day of just visibility. Like, we can't see the rainbow every day of the week. And then they talked about conversion therapy to change a person's gender identity. That's harmful. To change a person's gender identity, that can be very harmful, because it discourages therapists from actually doing their job and questioning their patient, because any questioning now looks like conversion therapy. So that is, I mean, that's the Secretary of Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, who said that. So really, really interesting. And then they have this problem where they go on to misgender all their employees. The irony is fantastic, in my opinion. But this is actually, so the AP reporter Matt Lee, AP reporter Matt Lee was actually pushing back on this, and actually had some pretty good stuff to say on this. So I'll play this video real quick.
Gotten any emails from any of your colleagues in the last, before you came out here? Obviously not while you've been at the podium, but since about noon or so.
Why don't you get to your question? And then
have you?
What's your question?
Do you have? Are you able to look at them right now?
My email? Yeah. I'm not going to pull up my email from the
podium. No. You don't need to show it to me.
Yeah.
I want to notice. I want to know if you've noticed anything different in the from line where it gives the sender.
Matt, this would be a lot better if you would just ask us what your question was.
Well, I mean, so you haven't noticed anything?
No.
Okay, so within the last hour and a half, 2 hours, the State Department's internal email system, and I've tested this, so I know that it's true, has added pronouns to people's not their signature, but to their from where it says from.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it will say him, he, his, or her,
Yeah.
or she, hers. Why? This is not an optional thing. This is something that has been just arbitrarily imposed. And I understand that people could have their pronouns attached if they wanted them to a signature before, but this is not something that anyone has a choice about. And so I'm just wondering why and who made this decision.
Well, Matt, I have not seen this phenomenon for myself.
Okay, well, I have, and I'll show it to you.
And is it just to ask you a question? Is it just for internal State Department?
Obviously not, because I tested it.
So
I got an email from someone in this building, and whereas before it did not have any of these pronouns attached to the sender's name, it now does. And I've also been told from other people that many of them, or at least
when you send it, does it have the?
I'll show it to you in a second.
Well, what I will just
say, if you don't know anything about this, then that's fine. Yeah. Can you look into it?
I'm happy to look into it.
And then he looked into it, and they got everybody therapy. So your tax dollars are now paying for free therapy for all the State Department employees who were triggered by being misgendered. But this brings up an interesting point, right? This isn't in the signature block. This is like artificially imposing it on all their employees. At least in the signature block, if you want to put your pronouns, you can put your pronouns and nobody questions it. And it's just kind of, I mean, it's a red flag for some, but then to mandate it, that it puts it into your heading, your header box is kind of a it's kind of a compelled speech thing. Even like you have to designate your pronouns to work at the State Department. And then they send out the wrong ones, and it's kind of hilarious because all these people are having meltdowns. I can just see what's going on at the State Department. People seeing all this stuff and then like melting down, like, oh my God, it called me they, them. Actually, I would probably melt down if it called me they, them. I'm not a they, them. I'm a single person. But I could just see the people. It has nothing to do with being trans. It's like anybody who's, if it's a woman, it's labeling them, he, him, even though they're a biological woman. It's labeling men, she, her. And it kind of strikes to the heart of the absurdity of the pronoun rituals and pronoun game, that it's so invalidating to people to have the wrong pronouns given to them. Yes, Mandy, you're absolutely right. It's like living on a planet of children. Unfortunately, that's what we see right now. At least in the States, we are seeing a world of children because, and I always go back to, it's the society that we gave everybody trophies, right? When you give everybody a trophy, participation trophies, then people, they want participation trophies for everything, and then they demand that you validate everything about them. It goes back to the speech issue on universities. It's like, now even universities, people are coming out of universities now, and they're not even able to handle somebody disagreeing with them about anything because they're not even able to handle anybody disagreeing with them because they were not taught to deal with conflict. They were completely validated by their instructors, by the university. They were validated. And so we have raised a system of children. And unfortunately, it's my generation. It was my generation who did this. Because we lived in a time, and it's a lot of it's the internet too. I think the internet plays a big part in this. Um, constant validation. You need constant validation from the outside external forces instead of, getting your validation from within. And that's it's wreaking havoc. And it reminds me too. Remember, I always say this is it's kind of it's first world problems, right? It's like when, and it actually goes back to what Puff Daddy said, more money, more problems. Because when you have, when you've been given all of this, when you've been given everything, you have to start creating problems. And the problem with what we're seeing in society right now is people are so depressed. And I talked about this, maybe a month or so ago. I was on with Olivia Rondeau and my friend Maggie Anders on their show Undoctrinated with Fee, and we talked about this because people are having such like mental health issues right now in this country. It's like the worst, and it's because people don't have purpose. And to find purpose, you need struggle. But we've ended all struggle. We say that nobody should struggle with anything. And so by, this generation expecting that society is just going to hand them everything, they're just going to give them the participation trophy, they have no struggle. And so they really have no purpose. And so they're finding their purpose in stuff like activism, which were issues that were not, which they're like making up activism issues, like issues to advocate for, or they're being, misled and saying like, again, like the crazy, like the wokeness of like CRT and queer theory and all that stuff, saying that you are so oppressed. But like, as a trans person, I can't think of a single right that I don't have as a trans person. As a trans adult, people would say kids, but again, kids don't have the ability to consent to the stuff that they're trying to push for. But as a trans adult, there's not a single right that I do not have. I can make medical decisions for myself, which if there were states that were banning that, I think that's gone too far. But it's, we've pushed this victim narrative. And it actually reminds me, if you go back and you watch Matt Walsh's What is a Woman documentary again, when he traveled to Africa, and you see they don't worry about any of the same stuff because their purpose is to find food for the day, go out, get food, hunter-gatherer mentality, and survive. They don't worry about being misgendered. They just worry about, the important things. And so I guess when you don't have to worry about that type of stuff, you create problems. Let me see. Yeah, I agree, Jen. Typically they want the cause but not the solution. But this is one of the things that happens a lot too, is that when you put when there's you have an issue, you're right. Most people, they will fight, they will advocate against the cause, and they won't provide any solutions. Where I guess I look at things more of a solutionary system, and this goes on both sides. This isn't just this isn't just the left. When we look at, if we talk about like the trans debate or any of this stuff, we talk about that and we see, nobody's actually providing real solutions that would make any change. And actually, a lot of time when I talk to radical feminists about stuff, and I put forth solutions, and one of the things I actually hear quite a bit, especially when it comes to, like I said, radical feminists, it's like when I say, well, what's your solution? They always say it's not for women to figure out. And so it's kind of the same thing. They want the solution, they want the cause, but they don't want to actually bring any solutions to the table other than a hardline stance against an all-out, ban and stuff like that. It's like they enjoy being miserable, and if they are not, then they will find a reason. Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. We live in a victimhood culture right now. We live where you actually get points for being labeled as a victim. Only way trans people are oppressed is by the TRA is going insane and turning average people against them. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, that's how we've gotten to this point, Mafia Guido, is that the TRAs kind of created these problems. Actually, I go back to, it's interesting because I would go back to 2016. What the hell is this? No. This is not what I wanted to do. That's weird. Okay, 1 second. I would go back to 2016 when something weird just popped up on my computer. Now I probably got a virus or something because I'm talking about stuff I'm not supposed to be talking about. But I would typically go back to 2016 when, after gay marriage was legalized, and actually before I go into this, I'm not saying this is the slippery slope per se. I'm saying this is kind of what this is the process. And actually, if you go, I wrote an article about why the slippery slope is a fallacy. I think I presented that on here in one of the earlier episodes. But in 2016, the Charlotte, North Carolina passed the first, it was basically the first self-ID law. So they were basically creating a problem with a solution. There was never any issues with trans people using the bathrooms that they presented as up until that point. But they created the self-ID part, which caused the state of North Carolina to react the way that they did and ban, basically do an all-out ban, which was wildly unpopular. It saw, butch, or more tomboy than butch lesbians to be outed in bathrooms, and then and so that's not a solution, is an all-out ban. But yeah, it was the creating of a problem with the solution that was the biggest issue there. And so that's what we're seeing on a much larger scale when it comes to trans acceptance, is we're seeing the left continue, the crazy TRAs continue to create these problems with the solution.